The attempted robbery of the Federal Reserve cash shipment should have been a simple criminal operation. But armored car guard Jake Morrison recognized the terrorist financing patterns, international money movement techniques, and criminal network indicators that revealed he wasn't just transport security. He was a former Treasury Department agent whose financial crimes expertise had disrupted terrorist funding operations that threatened American national security. Jake Morrison had been working as an armored car security guard for Secure Transport Solutions for 4 years, and in that time, he'd become one of their most trusted professionals for high-value federal contracts. The company specialized in transporting cash, precious metals, and sensitive financial instruments for banks, government agencies, and federal institutions that required the highest levels of security and reliability. At 39, Jake carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who understood that protecting millions of dollars in transit required both tactical awareness and financial expertise. He was built like someone who maintained excellent physical condition, but his approach to armored car security emphasized intelligence gathering and threat analysis rather than just physical deterrence. His colleagues respected his analytical mind, and federal clients trusted his judgment about complex security operations. The armored car itself was a fortress on wheels: reinforced steel construction, bulletproof glass, advanced communication systems, and GPS tracking that provided real-time coordination with law enforcement agencies. Each vehicle carried between $5 million and $50 million, depending on the specific contract, making them attractive targets for sophisticated criminal organizations willing to risk federal prosecution for massive financial rewards. What made Jake different from typical armored car guards was his ability to recognize patterns in criminal behavior that indicated organized threats rather than opportunistic robbery attempts. While other guards focused on route security and physical protection protocols, Jake found himself automatically analyzing financial intelligence, monitoring suspicious activities, and recognizing the warning signs that preceded sophisticated attacks on high-value transport operations. His supervisors often commented on his unusual understanding of financial systems. The way he grasped complex money movement operations, understood international banking protocols, and recognized the regulatory compliance issues that governed federal cash transport. They attributed it to natural intelligence and thorough professional training, never suspecting that his expertise came from years of investigating how criminal organizations manipulated legitimate financial systems to fund illegal operations. The Federal Reserve contract was their most prestigious and sensitive assignment: monthly transport of currency between federal facilities, carrying amounts that could impact regional economic stability if compromised. It was also exactly the kind of symbolic and financial target that appealed to organizations seeking to disrupt American economic infrastructure for political or ideological purposes. The attack began at 10:35 a.m. on Interstate 495, just as the armored convoy was transporting $47 million in federal currency between Federal Reserve facilities. 3 vehicles moved in coordinated formation to block the armored truck's route, using tactical positioning that indicated military-level operational planning rather than typical criminal methodology. Jake's Treasury Department training activated immediately. While his partner followed standard robbery response protocols, Jake was analyzing the attack from the perspective of someone who understood how terrorist organizations funded their operations through systematic targeting of American financial infrastructure. The attack wasn't random criminal opportunism. It demonstrated sophisticated intelligence gathering, tactical coordination, and operational security that suggested state-sponsored or internationally funded criminal enterprise. The attackers had detailed knowledge of federal transport schedules, route planning, and security protocols that indicated insider intelligence or extensive surveillance operations. Jake realized that this wasn't just an armored car robbery. It was a terrorist financing operation designed to acquire federal currency that could be used to fund anti-American activities both domestically and internationally. His Treasury experience had taught him to recognize the difference between criminal profit motives and ideological attacks on American financial systems. The attackers' tactical approach confirmed Jake's assessment. They were using coordinated communication, tactical equipment, and operational methods that exceeded typical criminal capabilities. This was organized terrorism targeting American monetary systems, requiring federal law enforcement response and the kind of financial crimes expertise that only Treasury Department agents possessed. While company security protocols called for compliance with robbery demands to protect personnel safety, Jake's federal training told him that surrendering $47 million in federal currency to potential terrorist operatives could have national security implications far beyond the immediate financial loss. Jake's Treasury Department expertise allowed him to make tactical decisions that other armored car personnel couldn't. He understood terrorist financing methodologies, money laundering operations, and the international networks that converted stolen American currency into operational funding for anti-American activities. His first priority was preventing the currency from reaching terrorist financing networks that could use federal money to fund attacks against American interests worldwide. Jake's experience with financial crimes investigations had taught him that terrorist organizations often targeted government money transport specifically because federal currency was more difficult to trace through international banking systems. Using his knowledge of Treasury protocols combined with tactical training, Jake began implementing federal response procedures that could protect both the currency and civilian personnel, while alerting appropriate government agencies to what appeared to be a terrorist financing operation rather than conventional criminal activity. Jake's communication with federal authorities demonstrated expertise that exceeded normal armored car training. He was providing tactical analysis of terrorist financing indicators, operational assessment of international crime network methodologies, and financial intelligence that helped federal agents understand the broader implications of the attack. The most critical decision was whether to comply with robbery demands or resist based on national security considerations. Jake's Treasury background allowed him to evaluate the attackers' operational methods and determine that their sophisticated capabilities suggested connections to international terrorist financing networks that posed threats beyond simple monetary theft. His approach to the situation demonstrated the kind of analytical precision that characterized Treasury Department financial crimes investigation. Jake understood international money movement, terrorist financing patterns, and the intelligence indicators that distinguished ideological attacks from criminal profit operations. When federal agents arrived, they found Jake had already established secure communication with Treasury Department financial crimes units, provided tactical intelligence about potential terrorist financing operations, and implemented protective protocols that preserved both currency security and operational intelligence about the attackers' methodologies. Guard Morrison, your assessment of terrorist financing indicators and tactical response exceeded anything we'd expect from civilian armored car security, said FBI Financial Crimes Unit Supervisor Agent Sarah Chen as federal investigators secured the scene. Your understanding of international money movement and criminal network analysis suggests serious federal law enforcement training. How did you recognize terrorist financing patterns with that level of expertise? Jake's response stunned everyone present. I spent 8 years as a Treasury Department Special Agent investigating terrorist financing operations and international money laundering networks. When I left federal service, I wanted to continue protecting American financial systems, but I never expected to encounter terrorist financing operations targeting federal currency transport. The investigation revealed that Jake's tactical analysis had been completely accurate. The attackers were connected to an international terrorist financing network that had been systematically targeting American government money transport to acquire untraceable federal currency for funding anti-American operations worldwide. Secure Transport CEO Michael Rodriguez realized he had been employing a former Treasury Department financial crimes specialist as routine armored car security. "Jake, you're not just an armored car guard. You're a federal financial crimes investigator whose expertise just prevented terrorist acquisition of $47 million in federal currency that could have funded attacks against American interests." FBI agent Chen was particularly impressed by Jake's ability to distinguish terrorist financing operations from conventional criminal activity. "The intelligence you provided about international money movement patterns and terrorist network indicators allowed us to alert federal agencies about threats we wouldn't have recognized through standard robbery investigation procedures." What amazed federal investigators was Jake's tactical judgment under extreme pressure. His decision to resist robbery demands based on national security assessment had prevented federal currency from reaching terrorist financing networks while protecting civilian personnel and preserving operational intelligence about international criminal organizations. News of the incident spread throughout federal law enforcement and financial security communities within hours. Jake's successful identification of terrorist financing operations disguised as armored car robbery demonstrated how Treasury Department expertise could be essential for protecting American financial infrastructure from sophisticated international threats. The story resonated particularly strongly with other federal agents working in civilian financial security roles, showing that their specialized training provided capabilities that could be crucial for recognizing threats that exceeded conventional security planning. Many federal veterans had felt their expertise wasn't relevant to civilian financial protection work, but Jake's example proved otherwise. Treasury Department investigators conducted extensive analysis of the incident, recognizing that American financial transport systems faced evolving threats from international terrorist organizations seeking to acquire federal currency for operational funding. They wanted to understand how Jake's financial crimes background had enabled such effective threat recognition and whether his methods could be adapted for other high-value financial transport security operations. Jake worked closely with Treasury Department financial crimes specialists, FBI terrorist financing investigators, and federal financial transport security coordinators to develop enhanced threat assessment protocols that incorporated financial crimes intelligence while maintaining the commercial viability of private security companies serving federal contracts. The incident had profound effects on how federal financial transport approached security planning. Jake's analysis had revealed threat indicators that conventional security assessments had missed, demonstrating that sophisticated international criminal organizations required specialized financial crimes knowledge to identify and counter effectively. More importantly, Jake's approach had demonstrated that Treasury Department financial crimes expertise could be successfully integrated into civilian security operations without compromising commercial effectiveness or creating bureaucratic complications for private companies serving federal clients. Jake decided to remain with the Armored Car Company, but with expanded responsibilities that utilized his unique federal qualifications. The Treasury Department hired him as a consultant for financial transport security, responsible for developing terrorist financing threat recognition protocols for companies serving federal contracts. Federal law enforcement agencies maintained Jake as an expert advisor for cases involving potential terrorist financing operations targeting American financial infrastructure. But his primary focus remained on ensuring that private financial transport could continue serving federal clients without becoming vulnerable to international criminal exploitation. Veterans organizations highlighted Jake's story as an example of how specialized federal training could be successfully applied to civilian roles that served national financial security while providing meaningful employment for financial crimes specialists transitioning from government service. 2 years later, Jake had revolutionized financial transport security for companies serving federal contracts nationwide. His protocols for terrorist financing threat recognition, international criminal network analysis, and federal coordination had prevented numerous potential incidents while maintaining the commercial viability of private companies serving government financial transport needs. More importantly, Jake had demonstrated that Treasury Department financial crimes expertise could enhance civilian security without federalizing private financial transport operations. His approach combined specialized knowledge with genuine understanding of commercial financial transport requirements and the business principles that made private security companies effective. The armored car company itself had become a model for financial transport security that protected federal currency from international criminal threats while preserving the efficiency and cost-effectiveness that made private contractors valuable to government agencies. Federal security experts studied Jake's methods for protecting high-value financial transport. Detective Maria Santos, who had coordinated with Jake during the terrorist financing investigation, often brought new financial crimes investigators to observe his operations. "This is what professional financial transport security looks like," she would tell them. "Not just protecting money from robbery, but understanding international criminal networks well enough to prevent terrorist acquisition of American currency." Jake Morrison continues his security work with federal financial transport, but everyone in the company now understands that their Director of Federal Contract Security brings something extraordinary to his role. He's the former Treasury Department Special Agent who chose civilian financial security over federal career advancement, who understands that protecting American currency from terrorist financing is just as important as investigating international money laundering from government offices. His story reminds us that federal expertise developed in service to American financial security doesn't end when agents leave government employment. It continues in new forms of financial protection that may be less visible but are equally essential to preserving the economic systems that support American prosperity and national security. Sometimes the person protecting millions of dollars in federal currency transport carries training from the Treasury Department's most specialized financial crimes units, quietly preventing terrorist financing with skills developed investigating international money laundering and criminal network operations. These are the professionals who understand that protecting American financial infrastructure requires both tactical competence and deep knowledge of how international criminal organizations threaten economic security. Jake's choice to remain in civilian financial transport security rather than pursue high-profile federal contracting represents something fundamental about service: that protecting American financial systems doesn't require government authority or agency recognition. Sometimes the most valuable service happens in armored trucks across America, provided by professionals whose expertise ensures that federal currency remains secure from international criminal exploitation. The next time you see an armored car transporting valuable cargo and notice the security personnel who seem particularly observant and analytically competent, remember Jake's story. Some of them might just be former federal financial crimes specialists whose background in Treasury Department operations continues to serve and protect American economic security, one transport at a time.